Hi, this is Courtney Hernandez. Welcome to Ethics 101. We'll be learning the basics where we're going to cover Aristotle, Kant, and Care. We're diving into the world of ethics with Aristotle. A quote from Will Durant is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." Aristotle's ethical theory is often referred to as virtue ethics. It's one of the most influential frameworks in moral philosophy. But what does that exactly teach us about living a good life? Aristotle's ethical theory is centered on the idea of the good life. Unlike modern ideas of happiness as money or pleasure, Aristotle believed true happiness is achieved through a lifetime of virtuous living. And at the heart of Aristotle's ethics is the doctrine of the mean. So it says virtue lies between two extremes, a deficiency and an excess. The virtuous path is to find the balance. Aristotle identified two types of virtues, intellectual and moral. Wisdom and understanding are developed through education and reflection. Moral virtues like kindness and honesty are cultivated through habit and practice. So, how do we develop these virtues? Aristotle believed in learning by doing. The more we practice virtuous actions, the more they become part of our character. He emphasized that ethical living is not about following universal rules, but about developing the right habits over time. Aristotle's idea is that if we continue to practice virtuous habits daily to build our character, then in return, our life will flourish. So that brings us to the question of how can we apply Aristotle's ethics to today? Well, whether it's making fair decisions with our family or our coworkers or friends, practicing self-discipline in our routine, or maybe going to the gym, or striving to give our all and our best at work or school, he teaches that by choosing to act virtuously every day, we move closer to the good life. Now we move on to Immanuel Kant. He's one of the most influential thinkers, and his ethical theory is known as deontological ethics. It focuses on duty, reason, and universal moral principles. But what exactly does that mean for us? Kant believed that morality isn't about outcomes. It's not about personal desires or consequences, but it's about following absolute moral duties. According to him, the rightness or wrongness of an action really depends on whether it follows a universal moral law. At the heart of Kant's ethics is the categorical imperative, which is basically a test for determining moral actions. The formulation is act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. This means that you only act if you believe that that action should become a universal law. Another key principle is respecting each individual's dignity and autonomy. He teaches us to act from duty and respect moral laws by asking, what if everyone did this? We can guide our decisions toward universal fairness and integrity that way. Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means, but always at the same time as an end. Immanuel Kant. Now we're on to ethics of care. This is a moral theory that emphasizes relationships, empathy, and responsibility. Now, this approach to ethics is completely different than the first two. We're not dealing with universal rules or principles, but we're focusing on the importance of caring for others. Psychologist and philosopher Carol Gilligan introduced this theory by highlighting how moral reasoning can also be deeply rooted in care and relationships and even emotional connections. And ethics of care was developed in response to the traditional ethical theories like Kant and Aristotle that we've covered previously. Now, according to care ethics, moral decision making is dependent on the context. Instead of applying the same rule in all situations, we must consider the specific needs of individuals and respond with compassion. This makes care ethics especially relevant in healthcare, education, social work, really any area that we're dealing with care. This approach does require participants to reciprocate. Because care can sometimes turn into burden on one side or the other, both participants need to be in agreement. We can all probably relate and apply ethics of care somewhere in our life today, whether it's in our friendships, workplaces, or communities. We can practice care ethics by prioritizing kindness for other people, active listening, support for others. And this approach reminds us that morality is not just about rules, it's about fostering meaningful human connections. Ethics of care doesn't necessarily ask us to focus on rights or rules or fairness, but really prioritize and consider how our decisions impact people around us, especially those that are vulnerable. The ethics of care starts from the premise that as humans, we are inherently relational, responsive beings, and the human condition is one of connectedness or interdependence. Carol Gilligan. Hey, thanks for joining me today in Ethics of Care. I hope that this provided a better understanding of each theory as we covered Aristotle, Kant, and care.